For more than a century, people have had some mixed reactions to Brahms. Some say, I love his music, but others level a weird accusation saying, I just find him boring even though I know he's important. Even some musicians say that. That's a strange accusation because Brahms lived at the same time as composers like Tchaikovsky, Dvorak, and Wagner, and they shared a lot of the same musical language. So if people like those composers, why do some not like Brahms? So a lot of this might go back to one of the most famous rivalries of the 1800s, and that's the rivalry between Johannes Brahms and Richard Wagner. One of them represented tradition, continuing on the work that Beethoven did, that was Brahms, and the other, Wagner, represented progressivism, what the future of music was. And even with musicians, it feels like it sometimes lasts even to today, where people say, Brahms is the intellectual and Wagner is emotional, or Wagner is dramatic and Brahms is academic. The problem with prejudices is just that. People hear two or three pieces by either composer, and from that they make a judgment of their whole body of work. But it might be that in some respects, Brahms hides the drama. Listen to this excerpt from Waltz of the Flowers by Tchaikovsky. People like Tchaikovsky, Wagner, and Strauss, they give you memorable melodies right away. Not that Brahms doesn't do it, but they're more known for that. And then they build huge orchestral climaxes that satisfy the drama need in people. But Brahms's music is different. His music is based more on formal elements, on variation, on motivic development like Beethoven. Brahms does write beautiful, memorable melodies, but a lot of the passion is contained from within and it develops out of the form. And if you're not listening for that process or you're not used to it, you want an immediacy that Wagner or Tchaikovsky gives you, you may not get it. Now, this approach was famously described by the New Viennese School composer Arnold Schoenberg, composer who lived in the 20th century, who actually felt that Brahms was a progressive. He called this technique developing variation. A lot of people may not realize that Schoenberg actually thought of Brahms as the person who made the progressive movement possible, that made this New Viennese School possible. And he counteracted that Wagner argument with the idea that, no, Brahms is the one that wasn't a dead end. So in Brahms's developing variation technique, he presents an idea, it changes a little bit, and then it changes again, and slowly it generates the whole movement or piece. So instead of having a melody, which you place in different settings, which Brahms did do from time to time, Brahms will often give you an idea and then transform it again. And it's the process itself that gives meaning. But that process can sometimes be more internal than the other Romantic period composers. And some listeners don't know how to appreciate that. Not that they're less educated. I had a couple of professors in my graduate school who were very much against Brahms because they didn't think it was the right way to go. They just didn't get it, not because they weren't educated. But another thing about Brahms is that his orchestration is often a lot thicker than his contemporaries. If you think of a composer like Dvorak or Mendelssohn, there's a lot more space in the score to let your ears hear what's going on. But Brahms often likes to emphasize inner voices, doubled lines, counterpoint, things that do thicken up the texture a bit. Now, those techniques can be quite powerful, but you do have to take care when you perform them to not let them just sound like a mass of sound. And this is where Brahms got in trouble after he died in the 20th century, because the performance traditions there tended to be very romantic and tended to slow things down, to thicken things up, to add more instruments to the orchestra. And that approach, that lugubrious way of performing Brahms, really takes away the leanness and the meaning of what Brahms wrote. Brahms loved rhythmic energy, and if you slow things down and thicken them up, you just really lose that part. I'll give you a great example. Brahms loved to do 2 against 3. He has it all over the place. That creates a lot of energy that moves the piece forward. If you're going very slow, you lose that dynamic. But when you have conductors bring that element out and bring the other accents and displaced rhythms out that Brahms put in there, the music comes alive again. There's another reason why Brahms may be unfairly treated, and that's because he was in the shadow of one of the world's greatest composers, that's Beethoven. Brahms waited many years to write his first symphony, and when he finally did, guess what it was called? People called it Beethoven's 10th. And from that moment on, Brahms was often judged in relation to Beethoven. He was seen as someone who carried on Beethoven's tradition, which in some respects is what he did, but many people had trouble simply judging Brahms on his own terms. He was his own person, and in many ways his music is very different. And I think, for example, if you listen to any one of Brahms's 4 symphonies, you can hear where that music came from Beethoven, but it doesn't sound anything like Beethoven, at least to me. So there are strong views on Brahms for sure, and there are people who find that the nobility of character, the strength of expression that comes from within the music rather than something external, to be something that they really appreciate in Brahms. But why do some people still find him boring, even now, 100 plus years after he died? But it's strange when you consider that there's been so much music in the past 130, 140 years. Why can't we judge Brahms on his own merits? Why do we insist on comparing him to someone who came before him or the people around him when he is a unique composer? Think about this. Whether you like or don't like Brahms, you can't say that he sounds like anyone else or that anyone else sounds like him. And so if you're in the camp that doesn't like Brahms, consider this. Brahms might not be boring. It might be that he's a composer that asks us to listen to his music differently. And I think once you do that, you'll never hear them the same way again.